In the center of the university, there was a trio that everyone knew: Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius. They were inseparable, always walking together with confident strides and defiant looks. It was common to see them crossing the college campus, laughing loudly and making bold comments. Did you see Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius today? They just didn't show up for the professor's lecture, remarked a third-year student to her friend as they walked to the library. It doesn't surprise me. They always do that. I wonder how they manage to keep their grades so high. It was a mystery to everyone. The trio had a freedom that no other student seemed to possess. They skipped classes, ignored assignment deadlines, and somehow still managed to get the highest grades in the class. In the hallways, it was suspected that they had some kind of arrangement with someone in the administration or even with an influential professor. I heard that Vinicius's uncle is a close friend of the director, whispered a classmate while everyone waited for the chemistry class to start. That would explain a lot, replied her friend Sophia, thoughtfully. But it's just a rumor. The truth was that no one had concrete evidence of illicit activity or favoritism, but the suspicions were strong and looks of distrust always followed the trio. Besides their questionable attitudes towards classes, there was something else that united Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius: their personalities. They were all extroverted, bold, and exuded an air of superiority. Over the years, they became known as the stallions of the university, always flaunting designer clothes, imported cars, and luxurious parties. It was evident that they came from wealthy families, and for them, it seemed that money could buy anything, even respect and admiration from their peers on campus. In addition to their wealth and arrogance, Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius were known for their cruelty. They had the disturbing pastime of mocking those they considered inferior. Whether it was a classmate with simple clothes or a professor with a different accent, no one was safe from their taunts. Look at Daniel with that old backpack. I bet he found it in the trash, Tiago said, pointing at a classmate passing by. Vinicius, always ready to join in the mockery, added. And did you see the teacher trying to speak English yesterday? It sounded like she had a frog in her throat. Eduardo, the apparent leader of the trio, burst into loud laughter, further encouraging his friend's behavior. They moved around campus like predators, always lurking, always ready to pounce. To many, their presence together was akin to hyenas circling, waiting for the right moment to attack their prey. A second-year student vented to her friend. It's unbearable. They act like they own the place. Yesterday, Tiago threw my book on the ground and laughed as if it were the funniest thing in the world. Her friend agreed. And the worst part is they know they can get away with it. It's as if no one has the courage to stand up to them. The general sentiment was one of frustration and helplessness. It was clear that something needed to change, and many wondered why no one confronted the trio. They seemed untouchable, and what was even more alarming was that they were fully aware of it. With this awareness, they felt free to offend, ridicule, and even physically intimidate anyone who crossed their path. The university was like their personal playground, and everyone else was merely a pawn in their cruel game. The campus was always buzzing with the antics of Vinicius, Tiago, and Eduardo. However, from time to time, someone would emerge willing to challenge the trio's tyranny. On a sunny afternoon, André, a newly transferred student, decided to confront them. He had heard the rumors but was not willing to be just another victim. Seeing Tiago knock a classmate's books to the ground, he approached with a determined look. Why don't you try that with someone your own size? André challenged, helping the classmate pick up his books. Tiago, surprised to be confronted, looked to Vinicius and Eduardo for support. Eduardo shrugged with a sarcastic smile on his face. Who are you to tell us what to do? Eduardo replied. André, undeterred, shot back. I'm someone who believes in justice and respect, and you three could learn something about that. Despite André's bravery, his attempt to stand up to the trio did not have the desired effect. They mocked him and made jokes about the campus hero. But something had changed. People began to murmur, admiring André's courage and questioning why no one else had dared to challenge them. The resignation that had once pervaded the atmosphere began to dissipate. Many hoped, with renewed optimism, for the day when the trio would graduate and leave the university. But until that day came, a seed of resistance had been planted, and like all seeds, with time and proper care, it began to grow. Slowly, things started to change. At the beginning of the semester, the Advanced Technologies and Design Department welcomed a new student. Her name was Brenda. With long brown hair, expressive eyes, and a confident demeanor, she stood out. However, her attire was simple and unassuming. In contrast to the sophistication of many students in the department, her shoes were basic, her bag had no visible brand, and her clothes, though well-kept, were modest. Rumors circulated that Brenda had come from one of the most prestigious schools in the country, an institution known for producing top professionals in the field. But looking at her, few could imagine such a background. As Brenda made her way to her first class, the trio, Eduardo, Vinicius, and Tiago, watched her from a distance, always ready with their acidic comments. Eduardo, with a sarcastic smile, remarked, "A look at the newbie. It looks like she borrowed her clothes from her great-grandmother. I bet she's from the countryside, maybe a farm or something. Her parents probably spent all their savings to send her to this university. She must be on a scholarship." Tiago, never missing a chance to join in the mockery, added, Yeah, and I bet her town is so remote it doesn't even have internet signal. She probably thinks Wi-Fi is some kind of food." The two laughed, pleased with their observations, unaware that by judging Brenda solely on her appearance, they were making a significant mistake. Brenda, on the other hand, continued on her way, oblivious to the comments, focused on her goal of learning and excelling at the university. Upon hearing the hurtful comments, Brenda felt a mix of indignation and pity. She stopped, took a deep breath, and slowly turned to face the trio. Her eyes shone with determination and confidence, and with a clear voice, she said, You know, it's better to be seen as a country girl, authentic and genuine, than to be an empty vessel covered in labels. You hide behind your parents' money, but what do you really have inside? What remains when you strip away all that superficial shine?" She took a step forward, approaching Eduardo, and continued, "The world has a funny way of surprising us, and the wheel of fortune turns for everyone. Today you're on top, but tomorrow, do you really think this arrogant attitude and toxic behavior will last forever?" The room fell into absolute silence, all eyes fixed on the scene. The students who had felt oppressed by the trio for so long were now witnessing someone confronting them head-on. When Brenda finished, there was a moment of silence before the room erupted in applause and whistles. Many students stood up from their seats, applauding Brenda for her courage and eloquence. The trio, on the other hand, seemed stunned and speechless for the first time in a long while. Brenda's response resonated in the room, leaving an indelible mark. The trio, who had always felt invincible, were now disarmed and exposed. The looks that were once filled with fear and submission now shone with a new light of respect and admiration for Brenda. Vinicius, trying to maintain his composure, murmured to Tiago, "That was a low blow. She had no right." Tiago, still dazed, replied, "She may have caught us off guard now, but we won't let this go unpunished." Eduardo, the most affected by Brenda's retaliation, felt his face burn with embarrassment. He looked around and realized that the dynamics had shifted. "She's going to regret this," he whispered more to himself than to his friends. Although the trio tried to maintain an air of indifference, it was clear they were deeply hurt. They were not accustomed to being challenged, let alone publicly humiliated. In the following days, as Brenda continued her academic journey with dignity and grace, the trio met in secret, plotting something. They couldn't let that affront go unanswered. Eduardo, with a resentful look, said, "She might be the hero of the moment, but that won't last long. We have to put her in her place." Vinicius, rubbing his hands eagerly, added, "Yes, she needs to learn that she can't just humiliate people like us and get away with it." Tiago, always calculating, said, "We need to act smart. We must handle this the right way, without rushing into anything." Brenda, with her strong and determined demeanor, quickly became a prominent figure at the university. It wasn't just her courage in confronting the feared trio that set her apart, but also her academic dedication. The library became her second home, and it wasn't uncommon to see her studying and taking notes late into the night. Did you see Brenda's score on the last exam? She outperformed all of us, our classmate remarked to his friend. And that's not all, she replied. She's also been chosen to represent our university in an international design competition. She's amazing. The professors also took note of her talent. During a faculty meeting, one professor said, Brenda has a brilliant mind. She not only grasps concepts quickly but also has the ability to apply them in innovative ways. But while Brenda reaped the rewards of her hard work and dedication, the trio was scheming in the shadows. Eduardo, with a resentful look, said, She might be the star of the moment, but that won't last long. As Brenda continued to excel, the trio kept plotting in secret. They were determined to regain their position and make Brenda pay for her audacity. She remained focused on her future and making a difference, unaware of the looming danger. On a cloudy afternoon, the trio gathered on the terrace of a sophisticated cafe overlooking the bustling city center. Eduardo, with a shrewd look, outlined his plan, emphasizing each word to ensure his friends understood the brilliance behind his idea. Eulistène et Eduardo Began. We'll play a game of charm and cunning. We'll pretend that everything that happened is in the past and present a new positive image of the university. I'll invite her to my 25th birthday party. It will be at the most upscale restaurant in town. Vinicius, with a sarcastic smile, interrupted. And let me guess, you think she'll show up in one of those simple mismatched dresses, while we'll all be impeccably dressed in designer clothes? Exactly. Eduardo exclaimed. And when she's there, feeling out of place, we'll film every embarrassing moment and share it on social media. She'll never get in our way again. Tiago, always the more cautious one, asked. What if she gets suspicious? What if she doesn't come? Eduardo, confident, replied. She'll come. We'll make her believe that we're genuinely trying to make amends, and she'll be least expecting it. Vinicius laughed, picturing the scene in his mind. This is going to be epic. She thinks she can challenge us, but we'll show her where she belongs. Despite his initial reservations, Tiago couldn't help but get caught up in his friend's excitement. It will be the perfect revenge. She won't see it coming. The trio raised their glasses, sealing their Machiavellian plan, while the city continued its frenzied routine below, unaware of the schemes unfolding above. Everything was in full swing. Eduardo, with his meticulous nature, had already booked the renowned restaurant located in the heart of the city's most elegant district. With its panoramic views and luxurious ambience, it was the perfect setting for the plan. I've sent the invitations via email and social media to everyone, Eduardo said, showing the guest list on his tablet to his friends. But for Brenda, I thought of something more personal. The next day, Eduardo, dressed in a well-fitted suit and holding a golden envelope, approached Brenda in the university garden. Brenda, he began in a gentle tone, I wanted to personally deliver this invitation to my 25th birthday party. It would be an honor to have you there. We've had some misunderstandings, but perhaps this is a chance for us to start over. Brenda, a bit surprised, looked deeply into Eduardo's eyes. For a moment, she searched for any hint of malice but found only what seemed to be sincere eyes. Well, Eduardo, I'm flattered. I'll be there, she replied, accepting the invitation with a cautious smile. What Brenda didn't know was that she was walking straight into the web the trio had spun for her. She turned and continued on her way, contemplating what she would wear for the occasion. Eduardo, on the other hand, watched her walk away with a triumphant smile on his lips. He quickly sent a message to Tiago and Vinicius. She accepted. Phase 1 complete. The meticulously crafted plan by Eduardo, Tiago, and Vinicius was underway, and the trio's confidence was sky-high. They were convinced that Brenda, the country girl, would be the laughingstock of the party. However, they were about to discover that appearances can be deceiving. What they didn't know was that behind Brenda's simplicity was a rich and complex story. Her parents were not the humble farmers they imagined. In fact, they were renowned intellectuals. But for the trio of playboys raised in privilege and used to measuring people's worth by the size of their bank accounts, this mattered little. What's an academic title compared to a fat bank account? Tiago used to say, echoing the group's sentiment. Vinicius, laughing, once remarked. Whether you're a PhD, a professor, or a sweaty truck driver, to me they're all the same. What matters is what you have in your wallet, not in your head. And so, blinded by their arrogance and prejudice, they continued to underestimate Brenda, unaware of how wrong they were. Aiming to immortalize what they believed would be Brenda's downfall, the trio invested heavily in technology. They hired a professional team to install high-definition cameras at strategic points in the restaurant, live-streaming the event to ensure it was broadcast in real time on major social media platforms. This is going to be epic. Just imagine her face when she realizes the whole world is watching her humiliation, Vinicius exclaimed, rubbing his hands in anticipation. Tiago, looking at the equipment, commented. Nothing but the best to capture our triumph, right? The week felt endless for them. Anticipation grew each day, and their craving for revenge became even more intense. They could hardly wait for Saturday, the day when, in their minds, they would reclaim the respect and status they believed they had lost because of Brenda. On the day of the party, impeccably dressed in designer suits, the trio made a grand entrance into the restaurant, arriving in a specially rented red convertible. They disembarked to the attentive eyes of the guests who were already arriving. Let's make sure everything is working perfectly, Eduardo said, discreetly checking the cameras and signaling the technician to start the live stream. The first guests began to enter the restaurant, and a sense of anticipation filled the air. Everyone was eager to see what the night would bring, and the confident trio could hardly wait to set their devious plan in motion. As the restaurant's dining room filled with guests, Eduardo, holding a glass of champagne, moved gracefully between groups, accepting warm greetings and luxurious gifts. However, his blue eyes constantly scanned the entrance for any sign of Brenda's arrival. Vinicius, noticing Eduardo's anxiety, commented. She's probably still getting ready. You women always take a while to prepare. But Tiago, ever the skeptic of the trio, let out a sarcastic laugh. Or maybe she's realized how out of place she'd be at a party like this. I bet the country girl got scared of being the center of attention and decided to stay home, avoiding further humiliation. Eduardo, trying to maintain his composure, took a sip of his drink and said, Maybe you're right, Tiago. Maybe she realized she doesn't belong in this world and decided to spare us from her presence. However, deep down, a pang of disappointment hit Eduardo. He had meticulously planned every detail of that night, and Brenda's absence threatened to ruin everything. The evening was in full swing when the sound of a powerful engine drew everyone's attention. A long, imposing black limousine began to glide slowly toward the restaurant entrance. The city lights reflected off the polished surface of the vehicle, creating an almost magical effect. Eduardo, Tiago, and Vinicius exchanged glances, their curiosity evident on their faces. Who the hell arrives in a limousine at my party? Eduardo muttered, more to himself than to his friends. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. The guests stopped their conversations and turned their attention to the limousine. The silence was almost tangible. Then, the door of the limousine slowly opened, revealing a pair of elegant heels. Brenda emerged, stunning, in a dress that sparkled under the restaurant lights. The fabric, subtly draped, hugged her curves, and the sophisticated design screamed haute couture. Her previously simple hair was now styled in soft waves framing her face. Beside her, a young man with an upright posture and a confident demeanor stepped out of the car, wearing a flawless suit. He offered his arm to Brenda, and together they walked toward the entrance. Eduardo was speechless. He could barely recognize the young woman he had tried to humiliate. Brenda, with a radiant smile, approached and handed him an elegantly wrapped package. "Happy birthday, Eduardo," she said with a soft yet firm voice. He took the gift, still in shock, and as he opened a small part of the wrapping, he saw the glint of a prestigious brand watch. His eyes widened. "How did you get this?" "I thought you were, well, Eduardo stammered, clearly bewildered. With a playful smile, Brenda let out a contagious laugh, causing some nearby guests to turn to see what was happening. Then, she looked directly into Eduardo's eyes and said with a touch of sarcasm, "Oh, Eduardo, who told you I came from a humble family? Was it because of my simple, unpretentious wardrobe? I choose to dress this way because to me, flaunting wealth is extremely poor taste. Just so you know, my father is the CEO of one of the largest companies in the country, and my mother, well, she's the dean of this university. But I prefer to keep my personal and academic lives separate. I don't like to flaunt my background, unlike some people around here." The silence that followed was almost deafening. Tiago and Vinicius were left speechless, their faces going through a range of expressions from surprise to embarrassment. The arrogance that once radiated from them had been replaced by shock. The guests around them exchanged amused glances and whispered among themselves. The trio's attempt to humiliate Brenda had backfired, and now they were the center of attention, but for entirely different reasons than they had planned. Without a doubt, they had become the target of the night's jokes. In a corner of the restaurant, Alex, the young man accompanying Brenda, stood chatting animatedly with several guests. His well-tailored suit and designer shoes showcased his wealth, but it was his charisma and intelligence that truly impressed. Known in the business world for his acumen and ability to close multimillion-dollar deals, he had an 8-figure investment portfolio. "Did you know Alex has business partnerships with the parents of those 3? Whispered one guest to another, discreetly pointing in the direction of Eduardo, Tiago, and Vinicius. Alex, noticing the glances directed at him, approached the trio with an ironic smile. "Eduardo, Tiago, Vinicius, I believe our contracts are going well, aren't they?" The trio, still recovering from their previous shock, now had to contend with the fact that Brenda's boyfriend was not only wealthy but also had direct influence over their futures and their family's businesses. "I didn't know you knew each other," stammered Eduardo, clearly uncomfortable. "There are many things you don't know," Brenda replied, linking her arm with Alex's. As if the universe were conspiring against them, the trio soon realized that the cameras they had installed to capture Brenda's supposed humiliation were actually broadcasting their own embarrassment live to the entire university. Their plan not only failed miserably, but now they were the center of attention and laughter. Meanwhile, Brenda and Alex, immersed in their own bubble of happiness, danced and celebrated the love they had shared for years, oblivious to the chaos unfolding around them. In the farthest corner of the restaurant, Eduardo, Tiago, and Vinicius huddled together, trying to hide from the disapproving glances of the guests. The atmosphere around them was heavy, and the silence among the 3 was deafening. Each was lost in their own thoughts, brooding over the humiliation they had endured. "I can't believe this happened," murmured Tiago, staring at the floor. "This is a nightmare," Vinicius responded, with a distant look. Eduardo, the birthday celebrant, simply sighed deeply, feeling the weight of his actions. "We really underestimated Brenda," he admitted. The next morning, the campus was buzzing with gossip and laughter. Social media was flooded with videos and memes from the previous night. The trio's humiliation became the most talked about topic, and Brenda was hailed as the hero who finally put the arrogant playboys in their place. "Did you see the video? They were completely lost," exclaimed one student. "Brenda is amazing. She really showed them," said another. Faced with the pressure and shame, the trio had no choice but to apologize publicly. In an act of humility, they gathered in the university's main courtyard. In front of a crowd of students, they offered their apologies for their behavior. "We are truly sorry for everything we've done," Eduardo said with a trembling voice. "We were wrong, and we hope everyone can forgive us." Brenda, ever graceful, accepted the apologies and in a gesture of kindness, extended her hand in reconciliation. "We all make mistakes," she said. "The important thing is to learn from them and grow as individuals." And so, the university learned a valuable lesson about humility, forgiveness, and the true meaning of character.